Now that we've ran our initial seed classification and we ran our iterations, let's take a look at the data that we have left. So if I come up here to my filters and I scan, you can see that we've got 2 million ground points and 2 million not, and then 425 points that I manually classified. So let's change this to right here and change it to by classification, and then let's go to all points. So, and turn the contours off. So here you can see every point and what we filtered and what we haven't filtered. And what you're looking for in here are large patches of gray, in this case gray, that may actually be ground. So the gray represents unclassified. But I see this here that may actually be ground. So you can tell that from either visiting the site or looking at the photogrammetry or photos. So we've got some data here that we probably need to clean up and bring in. Let's interrogate it real fast. Let's cut a profile across here with all our points on. And here's our car that we're looking at. So all this does look like it should be ground. There's nothing crazy about it. So what we're going to do is run some tools that allow us to come in here and get this to be real ground, or to get this data back into our ground data. Something else to mention is that we're going to take a step at the end that is going to thin this down from 2 million points to something that is more usable. So if I turn this back to ground, and you see these little creeps around sidewalks and maybe creeping up a car or something in here, when we go in and decimate or thin this data surface, these little minutia details will probably not be seen. So before you spend too much time trying to clean little stuff like this where it creeped up ever so slightly right here, keep that in mind. So let's go back over here. Let's turn everything back on, and let's focus on this area right over here. This just big old patch in the middle of the parking lot, it looks like. So we're going to come over here to our point clouds. We're going to make a new one, add, and let's call this ground cleanup. And under our task, we're going to come down and find the ground cleanup filter right here. Hit OK and hit OK. Under our source points, we're going to click that. We're going to clear it and do 0 and 1 again, and we're going to go to returns and do last filters and make sure last returns and make sure the filter's on, just like our previous tool. So we're going to hit OK there. Under boundary seed points, we want to use ground only. So I'm going to come up here and choose the ground system, and that's it, and that is active in yellow. So we're going to hit OK. Under our destination class, we're going to move them to ground and key points. Make sure that just like our previous is on there again. So hit OK. We're going to choose use existing seeds. We're going to make sure our units are in feet. We're going to activate our advanced. Under here we want to, the seed sample distance does not matter, so ignore that. We're going to turn on under nodes our specified iterations, and for the purposes of the demo we're going to put in the same thing we did before. You can change these if you want to depending on your project. We're going to turn on emit edge climbing algorithm, and we're going to change your iterations to 3, and then we're going to hit apply to save the tool. Now that we have the tool ready, let's open a profile view and have it down here, and let's change its colorization to classification and make sure it is set to all points. Okay. So with this tool, we are going to process it by polygon. So we're going to come right here and choose polygon. And by left clicking, I'm just going to crudely draw a shape around the area I want. Now this function does have an undo, and it only goes up to 500,000 points. So if you're doing large areas, you may need to do this in chunks. That way, if you don't like it, you can undo it. So to finish drawing polygon, I'm going to double click, and notice that now it wants me to place one or more points within the project area. So I'm going to click here, and you see this yellow point on the profile. What I'm looking at on the profile is to make sure that I am clicking on the ground. Since I have all points open, I could choose space noise, or in this case I might grab something on that car. So you're wanting to make sure that you're clicking ground, and you want to click around in here and try to generally evenly space through here the points, some points. And once you get on your last one, if you double click, it will run the command. And notice what it just did, it made all that ground. So all of this is now ground in here. And you would repeat this process through the project for all of the areas that you want to fix. The larger areas, you know, if you didn't want to go in and use the profile method, this is just another way of doing it. So for the sake of learning, we'll do it one more time. We're going to do it around this. So let's draw us a polygon around this area. I'll double click, and now I'll start clicking down on the ground. So and I'll double click, and there we go. And now that's back in there on the ground. So when I was looking at the 10 version of this earlier, and we go back to just ground, you see these large interpolation areas across this island. Those are those areas that have been taken out that may or may not be ground. So I'm going to quickly change this to RGB. Yep, that's grass, but I bet that curb made it angry and it wasn't sure what to do. So we'll go back to our classifications, and you can see that. So this is where you may need to zoom in and look at all this noise here. So this is an example. When you start clicking, you want to make sure you're not grabbing these power lines. So I might force 100% so that when I'm doing this, it doesn't grab the wrong thing. And I'll work my way around this area. Since I have power lines or something going across this area, I'm going to attack it in chunks. And since I don't want to accidentally click this point, so as I am clicking in here, I'm watching these yellow dots to make sure they are down on the ground. And by forcing the 100%, I'm able to avoid those power lines. So let's double click, and it's still kept a little bit here out, but for the purposes of what I'm doing, I'm going to leave that alone for the time being. And then you'll just repeat this process for as many as you need depending on your project. Keep in mind that you need to be attacking these one cycle or one LES at a time, cutting it up into smaller pieces so that you don't get lost in the millions and millions of points that you're working.